أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. We want to welcome our friends and guests in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I am pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. Today's focus for discussion in our first Women's History Month conversation is a hot button issue: the ongoing political imprisonment of Dr. Aafia Siddiquis. This month, March 2021, marks 18 torturous years of the brutal imprisonment of this political prisoner and prisoner of war. And I would say, by extension, the imprisonment of her family as well. Three exceptional women have joined us for today's conversation: Dr. Fauzia Siddiqui, Sister Amina Janjua, and my good friend, attorney Kathy Manley. Both Fauzia and Kathy have visited with us before, so I want to begin today's conversation with Amina Janjua. And due to time limitations, I'm not going to read her extensive bio. We will share it in its entirety later, inshallah. For now, let me simply state that hers is a love story of pain transformed into power and determination. And this occurred. Sister Janjua, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. I just wanted to just continue to give the audience just a little brief introduction to who you are. Your husband was a determined, a respected businessman and educator, and you transformed the pain that resulted from his disappearance into power and a determination to not only free him or to have him returned, but to have others returned as well. Pakistan has had thousands of disappeared, and Sister Amina's grief became a social justice-oriented movement. In addition to being an artist and a poet, she is author of a research book on the horrors of the so-called war on terror, in actuality a war of terror. The book is titled Grief Untold. Now, without any further ado, I want to formally greet my sister. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Amina.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I just noted how you became involved in the human rights struggle in Pakistan after your husband was disappeared in 2005. First question, is your husband still missing?
Yes, my husband is still missing, unfortunately. He was a businessman and he was a travel agent as well. And he was father of three and very close to his aging parents. And he used to take care of us all. We were living in heaven. We were so happy, so happily married, and so content, and like anything you can wish for, you had in your life. So there was no problem at all. But at the back of the backstory was that politically, the Pakistan was becoming partner of USA at that time in the war on terror, and we were not aware of that. Politically, it was going on in those days. I'm talking about in 2005, when my husband disappeared. Um, um, America had already waged war in Afghanistan at that time. and Pakistan was uh, in partnership with USA. So mm, at that time, George Bush was the president of America, and he called our president, who was General Musharraf, and
Mm-hmm.
General Musharraf was given no choice but to partner him in this war on terror. Unfortunately, since that day, after 9/11, things become really difficult for all the people in Pakistan, particularly who were like good people who were educated and who also had like Islamic values in them, who really were practicing Muslims and they were ideologically very strong. Things become very, very difficult for such families.
Yeah.
And scores of people were abducted
Yeah.
and they were even transported to Guantanamo and to first they were transported to Bagram in Afghanistan. It's like a very, very um, unfortunately very mm, uh, in which there are so many tortures and horrors that is unbelievable that in this world when society and things are getting so modern that people are going of planning to go to the Mars and at in such a stage such kind of horrors and tortures do exist in Bagram and in Guantanamo
Yeah.
when
Indeed.
humanity is suffering.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
similarly, my husband, a travel agent and an educator, he was abducted on his way to Peshawar along with his friend Faisal Faraz. So I was left with no choice but to struggle to find out why it has happened. Initially, we were not thinking that it's an abduction. We were thinking it may be some kind of accident. But unfortunately, it was after 2 years, we were given some indication through the Supreme Court of Pakistan. There was a person who was a ex-detainee. He came forward and he gave a 10 pages long statement in which he told about how he was incarcerated and how he was tortured. And he happened to see three people in his detention. And out of those three people, one of them was Masood Janjua, my husband. And he knew that he was Masood Janjua and he was a businessman and he was from Rawalpindi. So these three things were conveyed to the court, and I took this statement from the lawyer of Dr. Imran Munir, and then I wrote a petition in the Supreme Court that I have found evidence, witness statement for my husband, and please allow Dr. Imran Munir to give witness in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. So, like that, when I started raising voice for my husband, I was able to see a lot of other families which were also running here and there in the corridors of the Supreme Court and on the roads, and they were also aggrieved because their loved ones were also abducted.
Mm-hmm.
So I considered it my duty to help them out as well and to give a joint petition to the Supreme Court. Although I am not a lawyer, but I am a lawyer now, but at that time I was just a heartbroken housewife and searching for my husband. So I I just started writing applications for all those people who were aggrieved like myself. There were women whose sons were disappeared, there were sisters whose brothers were disappeared, and there were daughters whose fathers were disappeared. So I could not bear this. I could not bear all this suffering around me and not do anything for them.
Mm.
Although
May,
it
may
was
Allah bless you. May Allah bless you for that sentiment, Sister Amina. Let me ask you this. First of all, let me say, with all due respect, that in my opinion, Parvez Musharraf and the generals of Pakistan, they had a choice, and they made the wrong choice. When George Bush sent down that ultimatum, they made the wrong choice. Afia and her children were among the disappeared from March 2003 until the summer, if I remember correctly, of 2008. How did you come to know about Afia Siddiqui's case, and what is your personal position and your organization's position on this burning issue concerning this political prisoner whose plight has now become known around the world?
Yeah, Afia was disappeared in 2003 in the March, and I was not aware of this case because there were a lot of threats to the family, and the family was like so much harassed that they could not choose to come forward and raise voice for their sister. So, but when my husband got disappeared, and then I started to know about the politics of the country. Although I was a housewife, but later on I was interested in what's happening in the country, what's happening in the world, and why. So, just as you said that General Musharraf and all the generals at that time made a wrong decision. So they made a wrong decision of picking up an innocent uh, daughter of the country, which was Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, along with her three children. And it was when I came to know about this, and I had already formed Defense of Human Rights, my organization.
Yeah.
So when I looked at this question of a girl being abducted along with three children, I just forgot my own grief. I forgot my own grief, and I said that I will do anything which is possible for me or my organization for this girl. She is innocent, and I don't know him, I don't know her, I don't know her family, but she's my sister. So this was my feeling when I had no contact with Dr. Afia's family at that time. But later, when Sister Yvonne Ridley came to Pakistan, that was uh, 2008, when Sister Yvonne Ridley came to Pakistan, and he broke this news about Sister Afia Siddiqui being in Bagram jail, and that was a prison in Afghanistan. And over there, she was known as Prisoner 650. And a lot of detainees over there in prison of Afghanistan had seen, have heard um, a woman crying, and they knew that this woman is a Pakistani sister. And in fact, the detainees over there had given a very tough time to the administration, and they had gone on hunger strike for their sister so that she should be released. But instead of releasing Sister Afia, they actually shifted her. And that was exactly the time when Sister Yvonne Ridley came to Pakistan and broke the news in the media. We came to know about her, and then Sister Fauzia Siddiqui had to come forward to fight the case of her sister. And then I also happened to meet Sister Afia's sister, Dr. Fauzia Siddiqui. And since then, Defense of Human Rights had made so many protest demonstrations, seminars, and meetings and lobbying, meeting the Foreign Office. Shah Mahmood Qureshi is the now Foreign Minister of Pakistan. We also met him when he was the minister at least 5 years ago, and we met him, and we really requested for Sister Afia Siddiqui. Um, because we have also done our research in defense of human rights for Sister Afia Siddiqui. And the research is that there are many countries in the world who have like prisoner exchange treaty in between themselves. So similarly, like Pakistan and Thailand had this prisoner exchange treaty, and I was able to get at least 22 prisoners from Thailand repatriated to Pakistan.
Alhamdulillah.
Initially, Alhamdulillah, and initially they came to, they were received by the jail authorities and they went to the jail here. But then from here, the lawyers fought their case and now all of them are now released. So in the same way, our research is that if Pakistan can go for prisoner exchange treaty with USA, Sister Afia can be brought back to Pakistan. And once
Alhamdulillah.
she is in Pakistan, she can be, of course, there are 1001 lawyers who can fight her case and she will be free.
Okay, Sister
Once
Amina.
coming to Pakistan, I'm dead sure she will be free.
Yes, yes, I am with you on that. And because of the limitations on time, I'm gonna have to stop you here, bring in our two other guests, inshallah ta'ala, and I'm gonna have a couple of other questions for you later in the program. But for now,
Sure.
let me bring the other two guests in. Dr. Fauzia Siddiqui is a highly respected expert in the field of neurology who trained in the USA with, among other academic achievements, a fellowship from Harvard University. She has a graduate degree from Dow Medical College, but she is best known to us as one of two siblings of Dr. Aafia Siddiqui and as the leader of the international Free Afia movement. Our friend Kathy Manley is what we in the human rights community refer to as a legal activist, someone who uses their legal expertise to passionately work for justice. She is based in Albany, in the Albany area of upstate New York, and is a co-founder of the Muslim Solidarity Committee and Project Salam. Without any further ado, let us bring these two outstanding women on. And I greet you both with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Brother Mauri. How are you? And Kathy?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. MashaAllah. Can you hear us all right, Kathy?
Yes.
Kathy, you're not mute, are you? Okay,
We
you're
can't hear you,
muted, Kathy. You have to unmute yourself. Okay, while we're getting Kathy straight, let me begin with this question. For many of us here in the United States, Dr. Fauzia, many of us who have been following this ongoing tragedy for years now, there is profound disappointment over the Pakistani establishment's failure to launch a vigorous and sustained campaign for Afia's freedom. Are we wrong in being so disappointed with the Pakistani establishment? To your knowledge, is there something happening behind the scenes that we're not aware of? That's my first question to you.
Right, Brother Mauri. I wish that there was something happening behind the scenes. If there is, I'm not aware of it, and nobody has shared anything with me. After so many years of living through three governments, the People's Party, the Muslim League Nawaz, and now the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. All three governments, it seems that they're all one and the same. And though they raise slogans before the elections, and they get their votes on Afia, because Afia's is a case that touches the heart of every single Pakistani, of the common man, of every person, because her plight is that of a common person. She's abducted, she's kidnapped, her children are taken away from her, she's abused, she's tortured, and then she's falsely accused, and then she's trafficked or smuggled or rendered, and then falsely accused, and she's shot at. So there's so much that this one single woman has alone, has gone through. And her story resonates. Her pain resonates with the common Pakistani people. And so to gain their support and their votes, every leader, everyone who is now sitting in the assemblies and in the governments actually took votes and got there on their promises that they would be the ones that will bring Afia home. And denouncing the previous government that they did nothing. But if we see the People's Party, at least during that time, 2 of Afia's children were recovered, and we managed to find Afia. I mean, she was shot and then rendered, but at least we know where she is. So out of 4 people missing from our family, we should consider ourselves very lucky that we know the whereabouts of 3 of them, 2 of whom we have managed to get back home and who are now able to lead a normal life. And then after that, we were at least getting phone calls, but for the past 4 years, we have no contact whatsoever with Afia. I mean, we haven't heard her voice. In this day, and especially after COVID, every prison, everywhere, and even in the United States, allows video calls. So it minimizes visitations. But unfortunately, Afia's family was not allowed a video call. Afia was not able to talk to the family, and that is the most painful thing. Brother Mauri, if someone dies, there is some kind of once you bury the person, I think God just gives some kind of peace, and you manage to live through that. But in a situation like ours, every day and every night we live and we die. It is a pain that is something that I don't have the words to tell. And the way I see my mother enduring it is even more painful. But that aside, the government had many opportunities, starting way back from Raymond Davis, who was a mercenary who had killed Pakistanis in broad daylight, and he was let to go, whereas even the US had offered an exchange with Afia, but they preferred to take a few dollars to their name, it seems. And then, there was Colonel Joseph, and there were a lot of exchanges that they could do. There were a lot of opportunities. At the time of COVID, there was a compassionate release. The Pakistani government could have pushed for that. They could have pushed for at least Afia spending quarantine in the embassy rather than in the jail. They could have done a lot of things. You never know until you ask. You can't just assume. Right. And there were many opportunities. How many do I name? But unfortunately, they didn't. And then when I asked them, and then when we go to court, and the court asks them, they say, we are doing everything we can. And when we ask them to share what they are doing, they say, it's secret, it's confidential, we can't let you know. We are approaching them at the highest level. When I told them, but the US, which level? Because the State Department has no idea. They don't have any record of you ever asking or demanding for Afia. And they say, oh, that's confidential. We can't tell you who we contacted. So, I mean, on the one hand, you're saying that, she's the daughter of the nation, and our heart goes out to you. And they have all the words and all the tears that you would expect of sympathy and everything. And then the minute you turn around, it's just silence again. And it seems that they're not sincere. It seems they don't feel it. for them, it's just a political gain. It's just a political issue that they want to use to gain whatever political enhancements that they need, or personal. But the very fact that this is a human being, this is not just about Afia, but it is about every woman of Pakistan. It is about the dignity and honor of the people of Pakistan. It is about the worth of the green passport. But unfortunately, our leaders think that those things are only to be talked about during elections. It's an unfortunate reality. It seems that we are living in. I hope and pray that I'm wrong, and every time I hope and pray that I'm wrong. But it seems that as the days go by, things are getting more and more worse and more clear. It seems like Afia is the litmus test for who is actually sincere to humanity, who is sincere, and who isn't.
Indeed.
So,
indeed. Former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark described Afia's plight as, quote, the worst case of individual injustice I have ever witnessed, end quote. I was present when he said these words. It was in Texas. We had invited Ramsey to join us for a human rights mobilization for Afia outside the military base, the reserve base where she is being held, FMC Carswell, and to also speak at a couple of centers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area during that period. I heard him say these words, and when he said these words, it echoed what I had been feeling in my heart for years. It's the worst case of individual injustice I have ever witnessed. Kathy, as we mark the 18th year of this struggle, can you see any light at the end of this tunnel, this very dark, oppressive tunnel?
It's very difficult. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you fine now, yes.
Okay, thank you. I had the wrong microphone settings before, so thank you for having me. Yeah, it's as Dr. Fauzia described, it's been, and I've only been involved really since 2015, but it's been this horrendous journey over all these years. And there is a little bit of hope, of reason for hope now, I would say, and I'll talk about that. But it's been very discouraging what the Pakistani government has done and what they have not done, really. I represented the family along with Steve Downs, my colleague, another attorney, since 2015, when Dr. Fauzia arranged a trip for us to come to Pakistan and meet the family. And we had meetings with so many different people, with senators, judges, generals, a lot of government officials. And every time in those meetings, we raised the case and said, how can the government of Pakistan bring Afia back home? Can they do this treaty transfer, which happens very often with people when they're serving a sentence, when there's a treaty between two countries, or a multilateral treaty very often is the case. All Pakistan had to do was join the multilateral treaty of the Council of Europe, or any other multilateral treaty. There's some other ones, the Organization of American States. And back then in 2015, they kept saying, yes, we're trying to do that. We're trying to join the Council of Europe treaty, and it just needs to be signed by the Prime Minister. At that point, it had already cleared the various offices, supposedly, and it never happened. And then we hear later that, well, they actually gave up on that in 2013. So they were not being honest with us. And they may have tried a little bit. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they've really tried to get her back, because all they need to do is join one of these treaties, and then Afia can apply in the prison for this treaty transfer. And then if the Bureau of Prisons grants it, she can go home. If they deny it, then we need to put pressure on the US government. But Pakistan won't even take that first step. The hopeful thing that's been happening lately, well, for years and years, there were no visits at all for Afia, except for some Pakistani consular visits. and it was hard to know what was going on from those visits. Sometimes there were reports, sometimes there weren't very detailed reports. But now, through one of her former lawyers, Offia has a lawyer now who's able to visit her. So that's a really positive development, because that hasn't happened in a long time. So this lawyer has visited her twice, and she's having a really hard time. She's physically not too bad as far as we know. She's been so traumatized, though, that she's not in good shape, unfortunately, mentally. But one thing I can say, because I've been getting reports through meetings with the family on these visits, and one thing I can say for sure is she wants out of that prison. She wants to come home and be with her family. She desperately, desperately wants out of there. She's suffered so much. She says it feels like a lot longer than since 2003, a lot longer than 18 years. And another thing she said, and I don't think you've heard this, Mauri, as far as I know, is that she was encouraged by the protests at the prison. She knew when they were happening, and she said people were protesting here, but it hasn't happened in a while, and she was discouraged, I think, because of the pandemic. So that's a reason to do those protests again when it's possible. But I just hope that somehow the Pakistani government can join one of these treaties, or somehow there can be a prisoner swap or a treaty transfer so she can come home, because she's suffering, the family's suffering for no reason. It should never have happened.
Brother Mauri? Brother
Yes,
Mauri?
yes, yes.
Sorry for interrupting. But,
That's all
right. Kathy, you were mentioning that Afia definitely wants to come back, and she has repeatedly said that to her lawyer. So the claims that the Pakistani government and the Foreign Office are making that we would have helped Afia, but she refuses, seem to be something of their own imagination?
Yeah, I mean, they said she didn't want the clemency petition, but she is cooperating with the clemency petition that's filed with the pardon attorney in the U.S. The chances of that being granted are not very good, but she wants any way that she can get out of there. Yeah, so I don't believe them when they say she doesn't. Of course she wants out of there.
Right, thank you.
Dr. Fauzia and Sister Amina. Let's bring Sister Amina back into this conversation. What message would the two of you, as Pakistani women, what message would the two of you convey to Pakistani Americans on this issue of Offia Siddiqui and the many other disappeared that America's so-called war on terrorism has resulted in, but especially as pertains to Offia. Offia is a huge symbol and litmus test that if we are able to get past it, if we're able to successfully accept the challenge of Offia Siddiqui, I believe it would have a ripple effect on so many other cases that would not otherwise see the light of day. What message, Dr. Fauzia, would you, and we want to bring Sister Mina back in if we can, because I want her to respond to this as well. What message would you convey to Pakistani Americans? You know, every time there's any kind of special observance relating to Pakistan, there's a tremendous amount of outpouring of support and concern and love and excitement and pride, you know, that is expressed in the Pakistani American community, and they share that with many others outside of the community, other tribal members of within the Muslim community and non-Muslim community. But when it comes to these really challenging issues of political imprisonment, of prisoners of war being unjustly held and being, you know, brutally treated, there is, generally speaking, silence. What would you say to your community here in America? Let's start with you, Sister Amina, as someone who has, initiated this movement in Pakistan that has had a tremendous amount of,
Yeah,
success. What
yeah.
what would you say to your Pakistani American brothers and sisters?
I would say that just as I was hurt, and when my husband was taken away, and I was like badly emotionally, it was like devastating. But when I heard about Sister Afia being a female, a mother, a sister, a daughter being taken away, uh, along with her three small children, that was like very, very difficult for me to bear this grief. So I expect this to my brothers and sisters in America to feel their pain, feel the pain of their sister. We are not blood sisters, but yes, we are sisters in Islam. We are sisters in faith. So, and they have been raising a lot of voice from America, from Pakistan. The whole nation had been in the streets before the pandemic, and even up till now, we whatever was possible, Sister Fauzia has done. Humanly, whatever was possible in at the campaign level has been done. Now it's up to the government because it's a matter of two different countries. It's a matter between USA and Pakistan. So there's diplomacy which should be used. Diplomacy is, Sister Fauzia has very beautifully explained what are the flaws in diplomacy. That unfortunately our Pakistani government is not sincere. Our Pakistani government has been giving us impressions that yes, they are doing it, but in the end, they were actually doing nothing. So we feel very, very embarrassed at our own level that our own government is at actually the root cause of all this evil and all this suffering. So
Mm.
we expect now from the new government in USA, President Biden, we have been observing his uh, temperament and his body language, and also the way he came and what he claims even before coming to power. In his election campaign he was like uh, doing uh, very nice to the Muslims, and I think so we have a hope. And for this matter, I would request my brothers and sisters in America to please push this on your level, because from here in Pakistan, almost nothing is left. No stone has left unturned. I am a witness of how bravely, how boldly, how relentlessly Sister Fauzia has struggled. And all the organizations along with her. Whenever she called, whenever I called her, she was at my side. And whenever she called me, I was on her side. So we have been in the streets for ages now, 16
Yeah,
years, 18 years, almost half of your life.
yeah.
So we feel like getting old in this struggle. We feel like that. Like when I started, I was young and my children were so small. But now I think my children have grown up, they have got married now. And I might be a grandmother tomorrow. I feel old. Not in spiritual sense, but of course I have all the vigor and power to get all these wrong things to be corrected, whether in my life or after my life. But that is, I'm determined. But I mean, it's a very huge lifetime which has been spent in this struggle, and it's going to be like that. If not for Sister Afia, if not for Masood Janjua, if for so many other sisters and brothers in Pakistan who are suffering in different jails, so many who are we don't even know where they are. So for
That's
Sister
good.
Afia especially, our hearts are melted. Our
Mm.
hearts are just crying with tears of blood. And I really humbly plead to the Muslim brothers and sisters in America Not just Muslims, I would say all the humanitarian people, all those
Mm-hmm.
people who believe in justice, all those
Mm-hmm.
people who believe in human rights, because
Yes,
the
indeed.
world is one global village and we are all brothers and sisters.
That's right.
It's not just a matter of Islam, even, it's about humanity. How we feel about a
Indeed.
person who has not done anything. Afia has not done anything. He's innocent. And she's been subjected to horrible, horrible torments and tortures for such a long time.
Yes,
So this should not be. If we are human beings, we will not we will not accept it. And we
absolutely.
will
Yeah.
do it.
Sister Dr. Fauzia, your message to your Pakistani compatriots in America.
Um, Brother Mauri, I think Sister Amina has really said it all, and what we have been going through, obviously, we feel for each other. I mean, mine is the same struggle as what Sister Amina is going through,
Mm-hmm.
but hers is a beautiful struggle of love. She's doing that for the love of her life, for her husband, trying to find. And as she was alone, I was alone. And then together, people started joining us. And, you know, it became a caravan. And the caravan became a whole crowd. But in order for our voices to be heard, we need our compatriots around the globe because they are closer. They are in the US and there is a new government, a government that majority of them voted for, majority of them supported. And now is the time for them to ask the government to take a step to undo the wrong that has been done, the injustice that has been meted out to this woman and to a lot of others in the name of the war on terror. Um, it's it's the trials of fear and favor that that masked the uh, actual true picture of what these victims were going through, and it also biased the jury. But everyone knows Afia's story. Everyone knows of all the other people who are unjustly incarcerated just because of the color of their skin or because of their religious belief. I would appeal to Pakistani Americans, especially, to please raise their voice, join their voice with ours, because this is not just about Afia. This is not just to reunite Afia with her family or justice to her family. Justice to her family is probably not possible. Can anyone bring back the 18 years that Afia's mother spent waiting for her? Can anyone bring back the childhood of Afia's children without their mother? There is no justice there. But this is about each and every Pakistani and the value and the respect which they need to earn. If they will not stand up for their own, they will not have the respect that they need. And I think it is a duty also to stand up for their own, not only for their own, just for humanity's sake. This is Afia's case is human at its core and it's universal in appeal. This is about it's Women's Day tomorrow, and this is about a woman who is abducted, who's kidnapped, who's shot, whose children are taken away from her, whose little 6-month-old baby is left to die in front of her, a slow and painful death. I mean, isn't this what Women's Day is all about? I think it is. What Afia is symbolizing is a pandemic of abuse, This is not just local to Pakistan. This is going on everywhere. This is a pandemic of abuse. And
Absolutely.
I think this is what we need to be protected from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kathy, the war on terror was and continues to be conducted in the name of we, the people of America. Ostensibly, this is supposed to be a war in our defense. When it comes to Offia Siddiqui and so many others, and you're well aware of this as one of the founding members of the Muslim Solidarity Committee and Project Salam, you're well aware of the way that propaganda has been used to justify the unjustifiable. An organization that you and I are both very much aware of. We both, I'm sure, share admiration and respect for UNAC, based, I believe, in the Albany area. But UNAC, I mean, it has some activists, and some are very prominent activists that are very much aware of Afia's plight. I recall a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, one of the principal leaders within UNAC on a one-on-one conversation with me, sharing with me the fact that within UNAC itself, there has been a reluctance to really embrace the case of Offia because of the many distortions around her case. And the fact that, you know, these distortions have affected the consciousness of some of the veteran activists of that coalition organization. What would you say to our non-Muslim activists who are aware of Afia's plight, but who have been unfortunately seduced by the, I call it the Wikipedia, the misinformation, a lot of it already, I mean, disproven years ago, the misinformation in Wikipedia on Offia Siddiqui, and other, you know, disinformation organs like it when it comes to political prisoners. I mean, Wikipedia is good when it comes to, you know, most of the issues that one can research on that platform. But when it comes to political prisoners and other hot button controversial issues, I found it to be wanting when it comes to facts. What would you say to non-Muslim activists who for whatever the reason keep the case of Offia Siddiqui at a distance?
Well, one thing I would say is that whatever happened during that 5 years where she was missing, even if you don't believe she was in Bagram, and even if you don't believe she was held that whole time and tortured, which it seems that she was, and she was definitely kidnapped. But even if you don't believe that, look at what she's imprisoned for. She's not in prison for anything that happened during those 5 years. She's in prison because she got captured by the Afghans and shot by the Americans, and then in a very, very unfair trial. And I could talk about the fact that there's no way she could have shot the gun that she was convicted of shooting, because the holes in the, well, there's a lot of reasons, but the holes in the wall that were said to be caused by those shots were there before that day. Like, there's definite proof of that. And if that gun had been shot in that room, it would have blown the whole wall apart. There's been expert testimony about that. But the soldiers lied about it for whatever reason. They wanted her convicted. And not only that, but if somebody gets convicted of attempted murder, which is what the conviction was, very unfair conviction, because there was the forensic evidence showed that she didn't do it. But even so, when someone's convicted of attempted murder, they might get 10, 15 years in prison, not 86 years. She was sentenced with the terrorism enhancement. And that's completely outrageous based on the conviction and based on the evidence. And so even whatever you think about the other stuff, which a lot of it we really don't know, but I mean, I can say that a lot of it is false. It has been shown to be false. She should not be serving an 86-year sentence. And there's absolutely no reason why she shouldn't be sent home and why people shouldn't raise their voice in support of that. She's absolutely no threat to anyone. She's been traumatized for 18 years or whatever she went through. She's been clearly traumatized, and there's no way she poses a threat to anyone. What is the harm of sending her home? And that's what I would say to anybody, Muslim, non-Muslim, government official, peace activist, anybody. It's just not right. And she is clearly a victim of the war on terror. I mean, she was arrested right at the time, kidnapped right at the time when they were grabbing everybody. They were grabbing all these people and selling them into Guantanamo, torturing them. She was part of that whole mess and whole set of atrocities that went on, and now it's coming up on the 20th anniversary of the war on terror, starting from 2001, and we need to bring attention to her case as part of that 20-year anniversary and as part of rectifying those mistakes that were made, and where people, not just her, but a lot of people are still languishing in prison as a result of that crazy push to prevent another 9/11, and the rewards that were paid and people were sold, and Guantanamo needs to be closed. You know, all these things need to be dealt with and need to be rectified, and her case is definitely up there as part of that, part of the cases that need to be talked about and need to be brought to the forefront and need to provide whatever. I understand we can't provide justice, but we need to send her home and be with her family.
Absolutely. And let me, before I invite each of you to make some closing comments, I just want to piggyback on a word that you just used that whenever I hear it, I mean, immediately it invokes a response within me, because, you know, language is, especially when it comes to issues like this, is so very important. And I think it's important for us to be precise when we describe the choice of language you use to describe these outrages. You mentioned, and I often hear this by activists who are concerned about Aafia, the use of the word captured, when the reality is that Aafia wasn't captured. She was actually kidnapped, released after being discovered in Bagram by outside entities, and then, you know, she was released and then set up to be killed. That's what actually occurred. So, you know, kidnapped, released, set up to be killed. This is the more precise language when it comes to our sister Offia Siddiqui. With that said, and as I knew would be the case, this hour has gone so fast. We are just minutes away from the end of it. So what I want to do now is just invite each of you to take 2 minutes each to make some final thoughts, to share whatever final thoughts you would like to share on this platform. We're coming from out of South Africa, but we have an international audience. Whatever you want to say in 2 minutes of closing. Let's begin with you, Sister Amina. Inshallah.
Thank you, Brother Mauri. Well, I'm honored to be here, and the international audience is hearing this. So I would like to give a message through your platform to those who are actually perpetrators, who have been doing all these wrong, this underground world, this dark world, who actually create this injustice and atrocity upon human beings who are as nice as Sister Afia, and upon so innocent as the children of Sister Afia, that if you ever think about it, that you have also give your life away, you also maybe have your family, wife and children. So you can see that how we are giving our lives for our sister and our husband and our brothers. So if you realize this, that we will never settle down, no matter our life is gone, no matter our children's life may go away, but we will not settle, we will not compromise So if you understand this passion, you are going to just let it go. You will going to release Sister Afia. If you are going to realize that the people behind Sister Afia are not going to compromise, they are never going to compromise, no matter how long time is going by.
Alhamdulillah.
So this is my message.
Thank you, my sister. Kathy, what are your final thoughts?
I just want to say how I'm so sorry about your husband, Sister Amina, and I'm sorry about Afia, and I'm just also inspired by how the two of you have taken that pain, which is still there, I can see all the time, and put that into these very devoted, committed efforts to trying and get justice, or trying to get your family member back and try to support others too who are going through the same thing. And it's also the same with the group that I work with, the Coalition for Civil Freedoms. It was started by Dr. Sami Al-Arian, who was himself under house arrest in his own very unfair post 9/11 case. And when he started the group, and the people that are working for the coalition, a lot of them are also family members of people who are unjustly incarcerated. And I just think there's a lot of power in that, in being able to tell those stories and work with others who are in the same situation. And I just think we need to do a lot more of that and help to get the word out to more and more people, because I think if people did know these things, they would do something.
Thank you.
And Dr. Fauzia. Dr. Fauzia,
I would like
can you hear me?
to
Okay, go ahead.
say, yes. What I would like to say as a closing is I would thank listening. I want to thank Salah Media for providing this platform, and I would want to make an appeal that alone our voices, or just from Pakistan, are probably not enough. We need your support. We need your support to follow us on Twitter, to show your support. Be members, be followers on Twitter, on Facebook, so the world may see that thousands and millions who are listening are with us, heart and soul. Just join your voice with ours so it may resonate. Because I think that the reason that this injustice is going on, the reason the disappeared remain disappeared, and the reason Afia remains inside is that the abusers believe that she can be forgotten. They can be forgotten. They're just names in a long list of enforced disappeared. It's days like Women's Day and, days for the enforced disappeared, and that remind us, and that help us to remind everybody that no, they will not be forgotten. And as long as the perpetuators and the abusers know that they will not be forgotten, there's a chance that they will let them go. And for this, I need everyone's voice, little or big. I need your voice to join us, to join our hands, because only a unified struggle is going to help bring an end to this inhuman torture and this barbarism. Because if we don't, and if we keep quiet, this will continue. And it will not just be Afia or Masood Janjua. There will be hundreds and thousands and millions, and there will be no one to raise a voice for them.
Thank you, sisters. Alhamdulillah, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to have you all back. In fact, Sister Amina, I'm going to want to do a one-on-one with you to talk about your work in more depth, inshallah ta'ala, in the very near future. And I discovered something about you, Kathy, that I didn't know. what your a major originally was, and how you ended up being shifted into the area of law and this path you took to legal activism. I'm going to want a one-on-one with you as well, inshallah ta'ala, so we can explore that in more detail. On a final thought, what I want to do is conclude this very special program, this first program in Women's History Month, that the Aafia Foundation, in concert with Salam Media, is presenting. I want to conclude it with the remarks I made a couple of weeks ago in my address to the Istanbul Women's Branch of Hudapar.
Yeah.
I think the remarks are a very fitting closure to today's program. I said to our host, Sister Munivir Aktas, and the Istanbul Women's Branch of Hudapar, to my sister in Islam and leader of the International Free Aafia Movement, Dr. Aafia Siddiquis, to my friend and fellow warrior in the never-ending human rights struggle in America, Steve Downs, and the other members of this distinguished panel, and to all who have tuned in and will hopefully benefit from today's transnational gathering to bring attention to the plight of an abused prisoner of war. This program was on Offia Siddiqui. I greet you all in our traditional greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. If I had to give a title to this short speech, the title would be, Why Offia? If I remember correctly, the year was 2014. When in the aftermath of my visit to Pakistan, we organized a series of demonstrations for Dr. Aafia Siddiqui in the state of Texas, where she has been held as a political prisoner in solitary confinement for most of her postgraduate years in the United States. It was on this occasion that I heard the former U.S. Attorney General of the United States, the Honorable Ramsey Clark, refer to Aafia's imprisonment as the worst case of individual injustice he had ever witnessed. Those words resonated deep within my being, for I had felt the same way for many years. Many times over the years, I have been asked the question, why Aafia? Why is her case so important to you when there are so many injustices in the world? There are so many people in America who have been wrongfully imprisoned. Why so much time and energy spent over this one woman, Brother Saalakhan? My answer, because this woman's case, this one woman's plight is unprecedented in this modern age of ours on so many levels. In the early morning hours in the summer of last year, I wrote the following words in a short piece of commentary titled, Why Offia? It's 3:21 a.m., early morning on the 9th of El-Hajj, 1441, the day of Arafat, corresponding with July 30th, 2020 of the Gregorian calendar, when I decide to turn on my laptop to do some writing. On this night, I got about 2.5 hours of sleep. It's good that I live alone, so no one has to be disturbed by my insomnia. I've long grown accustomed to sleepless nights, and for the need to take a short nap or two during the day in an often feeble attempt to give my body its rights. Lately, I have found myself reflecting over a line in a song made famous by the late, great Paul Robeson, with much deeper understanding and appreciation. The lyric goes, I'm tired of living, scared of dying, but Old Man River keeps rolling along. While I don't know with any certainty what the author's intent was behind those lines, for me, Old Man River rolling along is a metaphor for time itself. It waits for no one. It's impervious to all circumstance. I'm tired of living, scared of dying, is a line of special significance, however. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is reported to have said something to the effect that this material world, i.e. this dunya, is a prison for the believer. It is the one thing that keeps me, that gives me reason for optimism, that I might just be able to depart this world on the right side of my Lord's favor. I often feel like a prisoner, but suicide is out of the question. Does this certify me as a believer? Allah knows best. Of the cases and issues that occupy my mental space, sometimes in the wee hours of the night, none has been as consistent and demanding as the case of Offia Siddiqui. On this note, I am reminded of one of the most persistent questions I have been met with over the years in my human rights work. Why Afia? Why is she so important? To this, I say there are many reasons. Number one, the first is her being an oppressed person. The second is her being an oppressed Muslim woman, a special category of oppressed persons according to Islam. Number three is her being the caliber of Muslim woman that she is, someone who had a widely respected reputation for dawah and doing what she could to bring relief to the oppressed. The fourth reason is the fact that she was targeted as a symbol to be used to send a message and instill fear in the Muslim world. The fifth is because the magnitude of abuse committed against her is off the charts. As former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark once said, the case of Offia Siddiqui is the worst case of individual injustice I have ever witnessed. The sixth reason is that as far as we know, she is still alive and being held under horrific, unconstitutional conditions. And finally, reason number seven, because her case represents a litmus test for committed Muslims the world over, other right-minded human beings, and the better of the two Americas. And with that, brothers and sisters, friends of Salah Media, the Aafia Foundation, the international movement to free Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, we encourage you, if you have not been a part of this movement, to become an active part of this movement. To the Muslims, I say, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, when we see an evil action, we must change it with our hands. If we cannot do so with our tongues, the jihad of the tongue, if we cannot do so, detest it within our hearts. And that is the weakest degree of faith. We are all, this entire global community, engulfed in a punishing pandemic. This is a wake-up call for the world. It's also an opportunity for a reset. Let us reset our priorities and give the attention to all of our oppressed brothers and sisters, all of the oppressed men and women and families throughout this world while we still can. Peace be unto you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.